Today we talk about love of God, family, community, and bourbon, and in that order, as the recipe for a life faithfully crafted with Wally Dant on Spirit Inspire starting right now.
Broadcasting from the Cathedral of the Assumption in Louisville, Kentucky, this is Spirit Inspire. And now, here is your host.
Welcome back to another episode of Spirit Inspire. I am your host for today, Vincent Ricketts, and joined with me is my co-host, Eric Huff.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back.
Good to be with you again, Eric.
Yeah, good to
and we have a special co-host, my dad, Jonathan Ricketts.
It's good to be here.
You're up there.
It's good to be here. In case you didn't hear my face.
It's only the second time. And our special guest for this episode is Wally Dant. Wally is the founder of Log Still Distillery and is a sixth generation, is that correct?
Yep.
Sixth generation bourbon distiller. And we've got a lot of great stuff to get into today. So welcome on the show, Wally.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Have you ever been on a Catholic show before?
I'm just trying to think back. No, I don't think I've ever been on a Catholic show before.
Right. But you've been in podcasting. I think I've seen
I've been
clips.
in a lot of podcasts, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think any sort of religious denomination that I've hit up on.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, it's
Especially
great
ours.
to have you here.
Yeah.
We're very grateful that you came out. We were talking before the show about your bio on the Log Still website, and on there you mention you say it's about love of God, family, community, and bourbon. And we were talking about how beautiful and just like rightly ordered that whole sentiment is. Why do you think it's important to put God first?
Because Jesus said so. I mean, I guess when he said the two greatest commandments, right? God alone, and then love your neighbor as yourself, right? I think, that's why when we came up with sort of our motto as an organization, you have to order things properly, and it's not about our success; it's really about His success, and God's will ultimately. And you never know where that's going to lead at any point in time. We all think we have this straight and narrow path that we're all destined to be on, and no, that's generally not the case. And so and a lot of times you might complain, like we all do, but at the end of the day, you don't know what's around the next hour, next corner, or next day. And ultimately, they always tell you, be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. And for me, I try to be as prepared as I can be. Then I always ask for more time because I feel like I need more time because, I don't want to spend eternity somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're saying that the way you have ordered, sort of your corporate motto, if you want to call it that. I don't want to put it in a box, but that has been arrived at through your own life experiences, and whenever life goes in a direction that you really don't expect it to go, it's something you can fall back on, and it allows you to keep your life focused on what's important.
Well, I try to make sure I center myself every day with prayer. I start out my day with prayer, and then I feel like the rest of the day, I can manage my way through by centering myself with prayer at the very beginning of the day. Prayer, and I do my daily readings every day, and so that just helps. Again, it just helps me just centering myself, and you don't I was raised Catholic, right? We're all cradle to grave. Went to Catholic schools depending on what states we lived in at the time. And, you know, I would say, you know, you have this, as opposed to what I've noticed, right? So others that come into the faith and go through RCIA and all of that, you know, I've noticed people that have this one great understanding of the Bible, right? And I don't feel like I ever had that great understanding of the Bible, because, you know, I'd go to church, we'd do our thing, and then we'd leave, right? And you go to school, and I'm not saying you didn't get religious education and all that sort of good stuff, but it wasn't kind of emphasized. And I see like other Christian faiths out there that really emphasize, you know, centered around the biblical teachings. And you know, I understand, you know, the Catholic faith and differences between our denomination and the other Christian denominations, but you know, I didn't come to fully appreciate, you know, the Word of God, and so, you know, until later on in life, and you know, Cursillo, I went to Cursillo, I don't know, about 10, 15 years ago now, and just saw how it transformed folks, right? Mm-hmm. Me in particular as well, and I wish I had done it sooner, being able to kind of form in this group to where you've got all this support of men around you and women, because they both, but you know, it was just, and I did that in the Archdiocese, or the Diocese of Nashville, and I just wish I had done that sooner. Yeah. Right? It was just a greater way to connect with a faith and prayer life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think, so I was a convert, and I came through our CIA, and I see it oftentimes now. There's certain things that just from my experience I might be taking for granted that had kind of come along with, well, I'd done the deep dive, and I knew enough about the Bible that I could be like, hey, I think this Catholic thing, at least at the time, like it's definitely the one, but I haven't gone back and really reflected on that. And then the beautiful thing is I just feel like, you know, at Mass, we're getting the Word of God proclaimed to us and the Scripture proclaimed to us. And if our hearts are in the right place and we're paying attention, which I've got little ones, so so that's sometimes hard to do. I feel like I am getting a wider breadth of the Bible every Sunday. And it's kind of on me in some ways with what I want to do with that, right, and then how engaged I am. But yeah, it's such a real blessing. Like the Scripture is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always found that a lot of Catholics really don't like to talk about themselves. I think we try to take humility to heart, and if you do, of course, it's hard to. Talking about yourself sometimes makes you feel uncomfortable, but if you'll allow me, I'd like to know a little bit more about you. It sounds like you have been around quite a bit. I understand that you now live, you know, back in Kentucky.
I do.
Yeah. But
I'm an official resident.
An official resident. You know,
you have to get a real ID now.
Have to pay Kentucky state income taxes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You must render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar.
That's right.
But I mean, if you wouldn't mind, you just kind of share with me, you know, a little bit of your kind of life history, maybe some of the geography that goes along with that.
Yeah, so born in South Bend, Indiana. So shortly after my parents were married, which was December of 62, they had me in December of 63. So, you know, just like all good Catholics, you know, start having babies back in the day. And so there were three of us within 2.5 years of each other. And so my dad was completing his education at the University of Notre Dame, went to work for Bendix Corporation up there, which was it was a aerospace manufacturing company that eventually got gobbled up by others. But anyway, we were up there for about 3 years, and then he moved back to Kentucky, Louisville, to begin his career, his long-term career at UPS. And so that was 1968 or so that we moved back here, and so Mom and Dad are from where the distillery is, right, Gethsemane, Kentucky. So Mom from New Hope, Dad there in Gethsemane, and so all of their brothers, sisters, parents, everybody was from down in that area of Kentucky, and so coming back to Louisville, we spent a couple years here before Dad got moved again. And so with UPS, and if you've had anybody from UPS, they will tell you that most of the older folks would tell you the same thing. You bleed brown and move around, right? So that's how you got promoted was, you went and moved to another state, you got a promotion. So that's what Dad did. And so every year, every 3 years, but just about 3 years while I was growing up, I'm the oldest of 5, we moved. And so from South Bend to Louisville, back to basically Indianapolis, Brownsburg, Indiana, South Lyon, Michigan, Towatco, New Jersey, which is outside of New York. Spent 4 years there. Yeah, about 4 years there. And so I was in high school then. And then my last 2 years of high school, we moved from New Jersey back down to Atlanta, Georgia, which was culture shock for me. Going into the Deep South at the time. Atlanta wasn't quite what Atlanta is today. And graduated high school there, and then went to Purdue University for my undergrad.
Yeah, Jersey to Georgia. I don't think that there's two more dissimilar states to be in. I've got family. I've had family in Georgia. They're out now, but and my dad was stationed down in Warner Robins for a little while. But and then I've got family up in New Jersey now too.
It was night and day difference, right?
That's a huge change.
I certainly looked at my parents and said, "What have you done to me?" Right? And so it was a harder transition. That was my hardest transition of any of the places that I'd ever been to. We were used to moving around, so you left friends, you made friends, right? So that was kind of the whole deal. And when I got to, it was Roswell, Georgia, which was again north of Atlanta, and small community at the time. It's huge now. But, you get down there and you're like, oh, where have you plopped me, and who are these people, right? So made some really good friends, but ultimately, it was one of those transitions that I didn't appreciate too much at the time.
Sure. Was your family affiliating with Catholic parishes, I guess?
Everywhere we were going, we affiliated with the local parish or the school parish, whichever ones that we were in. So I was an altar boy, from I think fifth grade all the way through, to college. And depending on where we were, you had to figure out the new priest and how he did things, right?
Yeah.
So
we always think of I guess the rest of the world, non-Catholic world, probably thinks of us to the extent that they might know enough that our liturgy is pretty standard. Yep. But I bet you had an opportunity to see pretty broad range of that within those different geographic areas that you went, the different dioceses, the things like that. You probably saw a lot of different versions, if that's the right word, iterations, I guess, of the liturgy. Yeah,
it was really, it's so much is centered around your pastor, right, and what he brings to the table, and what he wants to see with regards to the Mass and the liturgy and the music and all of those sort of things. You know, you had what I call more liberal music, and then you had more, hymn chant, Gregorian chant, depending on where you were. And so it was certainly, eye-opening when you began to see that, and you were old enough to begin to see the real differences that were occurring. But yeah, I mean, you see that, even today, you go out to Epiphany, or at least when I lived in Louisville a while back, you go to Epiphany, and it was very different from, some of the other local churches here. So I don't know if it's that way today, but it was one of those.
I think within the archdiocese, my experience is you get a pretty broad range. There have been some things recently which have made things a little more uniform.
Right.
Just our archbishop just put something out recently about whether or not we stand or kneel after receiving communion.
Yeah.
And there's a few parishes that'll have the communion rail, for example. But so I mean there are some differences, but my experience was nuclear family. Going to the same parish pretty much my whole childhood. I didn't really realize that there were those variations until, really my adult life, and actually kind of looking around and winding up where I am today is a celebration which I feel elevates everything about it and everyone around it. Where do you worship today?
There's basically 3 parishes that are within 5 to 7 miles of each other, down in New Hope. So we got New Hope, we have St. Vincent de Paul, which is what I call my home parish. Then we have St. Catherine, which is in New Haven, which is really literally 3.5 miles from New Hope, because every church, it's funny for me, right? Because I've moved around so many times, even in my adult life. When you come to central Kentucky, every town has a Catholic church.
Yeah.
Right? You go anywhere, particularly south and west, you don't see that at all.
Yeah.
Right? And here we have so many. Well, even outside of just central Kentucky, you can, Catholic churches get more sparse. But every community had its own church.
Yeah.
And so St. Catherine, Immaculate Conception, which is in Culvertown, and St. Vincent de Paul, all serviced by one pastor. And I think that's been ongoing now for a number of years now. So depending on when I get up and whether I'm going to get up go to the 7 a.m. Mass at Immaculate Conception, or the 8:30 at St. Vincent de Paul, or 10 at St. Catherine. And it's funny, you see all of us parishioners at every single one of them, depending on just what I did when you wake up and ready to go. So,
and this is so relevant too with the distillery where it is, and then just that area of the country. Like when I first came here, I'm like, oh, it's just a really Catholic area, the Kentucky Holy Land. But really, there's nowhere else that exists with kind of that rural, colonial, but very, very Catholic feel where each town you go into, and you've got a parish right in the center, and they're all amazing. And, even out into St. Augustine and Lebanon, and I'm trying to think of the other one, St. Dominic, and then right up the street is St. Rose. And
you got the Abbey there, right?
Yeah, and then Gethsemane.
Right, then you got Nazareth, and then you've got Nearinx, so you begin to really kind of look at what our diocese has done over the course of time, right? There's just the cool thing is that, we've got a number of bishops now that have come out of our diocese, right? Indianapolis with Thompson, right? And
Nashville.
Spalding. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and how far are you from Holy Cross?
Holy Cross is 8-9 miles.
Okay. I know that's one of the pilgrimage sites for the Jubilee Year of Hope that has been established. I don't know if any of those three that you've mentioned that you go to regularly have been identified that, but as a pilgrimage site. But how cool is it to have the oldest Catholic church in the frontier? I don't know if it's west of the Alleghenies or whatever it is.
That sounds right to me.
I think it's west of the Alleghenies.
In the
It is,
United
yeah.
States. I mean, that's pretty cool. It certainly doesn't dip the toe into the depth of history in Europe, of course, but from an American perspective, it's pretty doggone cool to have that. I think it's great, and of course, it boasts the relic of the True Cross. We had an opportunity to go down there for their summer picnic and got some of their fried chicken, which
we know how to do fried chicken down in that part of the world.
I think I've seen a sign from St. Thomas from like maybe 100 years ago that it was like maybe mass times and then like also like fried chicken dinner on the side, just as big. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's neat stuff. Wow. So, I don't want to stop talking about your family, but I think we'll probably get back into this a little bit. But I'm dying to talk about the bourbon.
Yeah,
Sure. I don't know. I don't want to take over from the two
No, that's excellent.
mainstay hosts here. But if it's okay, can we talk about it and pour a little?
Yeah, that's what I've been excited
Absolutely.
about.
Let's do it.
I'm gonna help myself, Aaron.
You first.
What am I pouring here, Wally?
You are pouring what we call our faithfully crafted Trinity Blend bourbon. So what we tried to do with this, along with the Archdiocese of Louisville, was create something that honored the faith in a hopefully a special way, right? That so much of the bourbon families were of Catholic descent, and as I thought about this project and how cool it would be to to bring something to the Archdiocese that would honor our combined histories and something that would be unique, right? Because it's also meant to raise funds, and so when I approached, it was Tink Guthrie, and so Tink is from that neck of the woods as well, and so we were doing some salt and light events on our campus, and so I approached Tink and said, hey, had you ever thought about maybe doing something with bourbon, as a way to honor God ultimately, and provide some funds that would be generated out of this back to the Archdiocese, and so we started talking about it. He thought, well, wouldn't that be a pretty cool idea? And so he then ran it up the flagpole, and there's not too many people up on that flagpole where he was, and so ultimately Brian Reynolds was intimately involved with this along with the Archbishop, and they gave the thumbs up, and so we started running and really trying to pull something together that everybody could see and go, wow, you guys have created something that honors the faith and honors the Archdiocese and everything that we stand for here out of the Archdiocese of Louisville. And so it
sounds to me like it was really your idea. Well, to combine, the faith, with this gift that I call bourbon, and it was based upon your suggestion that it kind of came to be. You can be proud of that.
Yeah, well, you can. when I first started the distillery, right? When I had the idea about starting the distillery, and kind of when it all came together. My dad's a priest, or was a priest. He's since passed, and I guess he'll always be a priest. But he became a priest after my mom had passed away, and so as a way of like honoring his calling, right? I felt that this would be something that would be really, really special, that he could look down on and say, hey, son. That was pretty cool.
That is cool. I love to hear that. It actually kind of gives me a little chill that you had an opportunity to honor your father and your family legacy in that way.
It's a pretty unique
And your
situation.
It was
Having dad be a Catholic priest, especially in the Latin rite. I just thoughts there, and kind of from your perspective, what was that like?
So this would have been, so my mom passed away in 2003. So my dad had already retired from his career at UPS. And he started the diaconate program, right, at St. Aloysius, which is where their home parish was.
Shepherdsville or Pewee Valley?
Pewee Valley.
Okay.
And so, he went through the diaconate program. Of course, Mom was right there with him. She loved going to classes, and anybody that some of the guys that like Brian and others that knew my parents would tell you that she loved going to classes, and so they made it through, right? And so he was ordained a deacon in August of 2002, and literally, January of 2023, my mom passes away, and so as a part of his, thinking about what it means now to be a widower and all of that, and he said, he came to all of us kids and said, "Hey, I'd like to become a priest. That's really what I feel my calling is now." And so Archbishop Kelly was Archbishop then, and so we wrote to the Archbishop and said, "Hey, we're fully supportive of our dad moving on past his program as a deacon, and moving into being a priest." And so of course he knew my father through that program, right? And my dad was always involved with the church at St. Al's, and so they accepted him, to be a parish priest in that program, and so they sent him up to Hales Corner, Wisconsin, which specializes in widowers and or men that have had their marriages annulled.
Wow.
To become priests. And because for all of the rest that haven't been married before in one way or another, they all go through generally a different seminary.
Right.
And so these were all men that had been married or had their marriages annulled, that he went through 2 years because he had just gone through the diaconate program. So he was accelerated. So 2 years of more study there.
There's
to
some
be a
life
priest.
experience in play there too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it was pretty, for him, it was one, to be around men that were in his similar situation, right? Was really important for my dad.
Yeah.
He made some great, friends for the rest of his life, and then to be able to get ordained here at the cathedral, and that was 2005, I want to say. And he actually went through with a Baptist minister who became a priest, and Father Hopper.
Okay.
I think Father Hopper's E-Town Radcliffe today, in parish down there, Jeff Hopper. And so my dad, it was the two of them that were getting ordained. So it was kind of this weird sort of thing. I'm sure it was for Archbishop Kelly that that two people were getting ordained at the same time. One was formerly married, right, and an older gentleman, which was my dad, and then Father Jeff Hopper, who had a family, right?
Yeah. Unprecedented.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things. And I remember him talking about it at that ordination mass. So, yeah, it was pretty cool experience.
And about what year did you have this conversation with Tink about the label?
So we came out with this in 24, right?
Okay.
Yep, 24. So it was 24.
Okay.
2024.
Wow. Well, I certainly the first thing that before you even open the bottle, what's striking to me is the artwork on the label. Do you know a little bit of, or can you tell us a little bit about the story to that? Because it's a beautiful label.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, so we worked with Tink, and I just can't remember the woman's name at the Archdiocese that was, supplying a lot of the artwork that was surrounding it. We wanted the seal of the Archbishop, and then our designer that we use on everything. He is just one heck of a talented designer.
Your stuff looks really good. Yeah. I would just say nothing if it wasn't the case, but yeah, it's beautiful.
He's just an incredible artist, right? He takes ideas that we give him and he makes it come to life. And then we tinker with things, and so he came up with the original sort of design work on this. Him and Denise Engel, who is Catholic as well, and she's my head of brand management and sales, and she lives over in Jeffersonville across the river, and so she came up with a lot of this thought about the stained glass and all of that, and of course it's got our some of our Monks Road farm in the background, right? And so they came up with it, and we ran it through a number of different iterations with Tink and Brian and the Archbishop, and making sure that we lived within the confines of really what they wanted and how they wanted it presented, and then we came up with a few different iterations of the name on the front, and as we were blending the bourbon itself, so that's why you saw this Trinity blend out there, and people, this is like an Easter egg for all of us, right, from a Trinitarian perspective, and so when we were coming up with the blend, I said, well, let's do a third of kind of the three bourbons that we have in there, and see how it works, because we came up with a number of different blends to choose from, and that one just kind of hit on all cylinders, and I said, okay, well then let's call it the Trinity blend, and because I think what we would do if we do this again, which I'm hopeful we will, and so Brian, please say yes.
We'll get him back on here and strong arm him.
He's strong arming. That's right. But if we do it again, we'll do a different blend, and again, kind of do these Easter egg things where we can call out other pieces of our faith and kind of bring that forward. Is what my idea was behind some of that.
The so you mentioned about honoring the shared histories of log still, I suppose, of bourbon distilling in general, and then the Archdiocese of Louisville. Can you share some of that history?
Well, of course, we were I always call it the third diocese in the United States, right? Although I think, there are others that would correct me and say there was two others born at the same time. So there's like a total of 5, I think, that came after, Baltimore, and I can't remember the other one.
New Orleans.
And so, Yeah, because Tink knew that history better than I did, and so that was at that same time, right? All of these Catholic families that came over from Maryland to settle in, what we call the Holy Land here. My family was one of those families. They were in the second wave, that second group that came over with Basil Hayden, and so
Was that from Maryland, or was that
Maryland? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I found out I had some family on the Ark and the Dove, which were the ships that brought them over.
Oh, really?
To Maryland, but I don't have any.
Oh.
I have to do some deep dive because I don't have any story or anything, just names and dates right now.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Have you ever been to Maryland? Have you seen?
I haven't gone
Okay.
there to see any of that.
Yeah, I want to check that out.
I've got one of my cousins that does a lot of family history and kind of tracing back to when they all came over from England over into Maryland, right? And there's some different spellings of our name, and you're trying to figure out, okay, is it Dante, and then we've seen some others that had Bant. Who knows?
I think people were saying things more than they were writing them down at the
that's
time.
right. That's
too.
right. That's right.
I always run into this. It's like there were like 10 people living out in the wilderness, and it's like 2 of them have the same name.
Right.
And it's like, oh, and I'm not related to the other one, and the records get conflated and everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's crazy. Yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, what so we're looking at with the future with a potentially follow up to Faithfully Crafted, but what else do you have going on over there right now?
Oh, we've got plenty. You try to. So the bourbon business is it's about, most of it is about marketing, right? And I'm not saying that what you have in the glass shouldn't taste good and all of that sort of good stuff. It is, but ultimately, for the bourbon business, you want to have something that is going to move on a shelf and then be bought again, and so that there's this continuous change in turnover and inventory, right? Because every bourbon barrel that you produce takes 4 years, at least 4 years, for it to mature before you can actually put it in a bottle and sell. And so you've got all this inventory that's sitting in a rickhouse somewhere that you're going to need to deplete, put it into a bottle, and sell to then be able to earn any income on what you made 4+ years ago, right? So it's probably one of the only industries that does that sort of thing,
Yeah.
right? You think about all the alcohol space and all of the products that are in the alcohol space, outside of bourbon, scotch, depending on cognac, some tequilas that age, right? Wine ages depending on the varietal. There's not a whole lot, from another side perspective that doesn't get turned over quicker. Whether, you're building a truck out in a truck plant, with Ford, right?
Yeah.
You're pushing it through, you're finishing it, and you're putting it on a lot, and then you're selling it. Now, that may take a little bit of time,
Yeah.
but it's not 4 years.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm thinking
it's not
of
5
like,
years.
like new businesses. They say like, hey, wait 3 years until you can turn over a profit.
Right.
And anyway, you got to wait 4 before you can even start moving. Yeah.
Yeah, if I had thought about it a lot harder.
I don't know. It's pretty cool.
Don't say that. We might not have his
Seems-
label.
yeah, it
Oh my
seems well
goodness!
worth it.
Yeah. It's I was in so I was in healthcare, which is where I made money to be able to do all of this, and I also owned a wine and spirits retail store, along with some friends down in Tennessee, and then I bought wine and spirits, or we started a wine and spirits distribution company in Tennessee after we sold the store. And so I thought I knew, right? But I think all these bourbon makers that I talked to probably didn't tell me the whole truth and said, "Oh yeah, just come on in, the water's fine," right? Because you just don't. While you know, okay, it takes 4 years for a bourbon to age. Yeah, sure. Well, then you have to build your place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to put something away for 4 years. And just like you said, it's, you're like, okay, well, when's the money gonna come, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And a lot of moving
to
parts.
support everything we do.
I mean, if it were just the, the production side, I guess that would be one thing. But even when you start peeling the layers back, there's just a lot of moving parts that goes into a barrel of bourbon, from the, what you're buying from the farmer to the water, to the barrel that it's coming from, and the wood it takes to make the barrel. And I mean, gosh, it really is, kind of an orchestra of effort coming together to put that barrel up on a shelf.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know the numbers, but I know we've got a whole lot more barrels of bourbon on the, aging in Kentucky than we have people by far.
17.5 million. To be exact.
Not that anyone's counting. That's probably one of the reasons why I like Kentucky, honestly.
I was going to say, if I need one more reason to love being in Kentucky, there it is. That's awesome.
So I can't remember how many people we actually have in Kentucky.
Like 4 million.
You're really looking at, I think it's somewhere in that range, right?
Yeah.
So
speaking of someone who's really has a hard time
do
liking
the math,
people
that's
in
4
general.
barrels apiece for every Kentuckian, right? So real quick.
Good to know you have friends on your side, even when you're not liking people.
That's right.
Something that, and I keep hitting back on this, but I think I'm taking something for granted again, is that maybe the listeners or everyone sitting here, some of us might know, but where your location's at, and I'm thinking of like the Monks Road name, but might not know that history or why there's a Monks Road right there when you're heading in that direction, and it's a big part of Louisville history, or not Louisville, I'm sorry, Kentucky history.
Yeah, so my family, of course, we came over in the late 1700s, and then, they settled into what was then Washington County, which is today Marion County. So Washington got divided up, and Marion became, and so they settled there in Marion County, and then began migrating out from there. So like that side of the Dant family in particular. Was right there in what they call Dant, Kentucky.
Okay.
Right outside of St. Francis.
Because that's who lived there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's who lived there, and there was a train stop right there at the distillery, right? So just like Gethsemane has an old train depot, Dant had a train depot, and the reason for all of that, right, if you go to any old distillery that's still in existence today, they're all located on rail. And that's to get goods in and out of efficiently, right? And so that distillery was, had a train stop there, and eventually they called it Dant Station. If you go out that way today, there's still a road called Dant Station Road right there, and a little crossroad, and the old distillery was across the street. It's no longer in existence. I don't even know if you can find any foundational stones. I'm sure you can if you were doing some digging. But the old distillery was there, and then they all moved out circular from there. So they lived either in New Hope, right, or Gethsemane. And so one of the Dants that was a founder of St. Vincent de Paul also owned some land, and I think it was actually they had called the church St. Barbara at one point in time, Little St. Barbara, and so they wanted to build a girls' school. So this was the early 1800s, and so they donated that land that the Abbey sits on today to the Sisters of Loretto to build a church. I mean, not a church, but a girls' school.
Yeah.
So they did. They built a girls' school there, and eventually the sisters gave that property over to the Trappists to build the Abbey. And so, like, when we were coming home, like home, is what we call Kentucky home, because I told you we moved around a lot. So there was no individual state that we called home except for Kentucky. And so when we were coming home, every time all of us kids got onto Monk's Road, we knew we were near home, right? My grandparents' house. And so that's when, I went looking for names to name our, to come up with a brand name for Log Still. I was looking at a map and I just saw Monk's Road and I said, okay, well, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And again, it was a way, when we talk about God, family, community, it was a way to bring all of that together under that brand name. And so that's why we called it Monk's Road. And, I could tell you all sorts of stories around all of that, but it was one of those things that just said, okay, this is what we're gonna.
Is there
this
any?
is what we're gonna call our Kentucky products.
We speaking just anecdotally, my impression is that in some industries, there's probably some pushback, especially from the marketing department, that says, we want to stay away from faith, or we don't want to alienate people by virtue of, making faith a part of our label, because we have such a secular society these days, and faith seems to be polarizing. But in your industry, how do you feel about how open it's been to the expression that's got the word monk, or the faithfully crafted, or something like that?
Yeah, there are. There used to be an old whiskey brand called Old Monk, I think, and other, like wine. If you remember seeing some wine called Blue Nun. I don't know if you guys ever saw that or not.
It's a great name.
Probably you younger folks wouldn't remember that, but I know some of us older folks remember seeing Blue Nun a lot. So there were brands out there associated with, all of those, religious names. And, I didn't become when we put Monk's Road together, and if you look at a bottle, you don't see it overly, you don't, unless you really look. Yeah. Because if you really look, particularly at our artwork, and depending on the bottle it is and how much it shows up, like down in this corner, you will see a cross, right? But you really have to look for it.
Yeah.
And so, I wanted it to be there. You've got the fleur-de-lis, right? The fleur-de-lis is, not many people know it, but it's faith-based as well. And so we included those things. We weren't trying to be overly overt about it. We talk about it, right? If people ask, we talk about it. But it's a way to, in my mind, keep faith at the forefront. And so, for me, it was a subtle way to do that. And if you want to know the story, then ask, right? Mm-hmm. So.
Well, and of course, the label itself is shaped as a bishop's mitre, mm-hmm. Which, for those who don't know, you look back at it from 30,000 feet, so to speak, or from 20 feet or whatever, you can see that. Yeah. But it's really a beautiful label, and I respect the fact that you feel confident and comfortable enough to maybe go a little bit further than just a name, with the associating it with faith. Yeah. I guess we're seeing more and more that, at least I feel like, we're coming off the the heels of what I would call a national tragedy, and people, I hope, feel confident enough to speak about their faith. And when the industry does that, I think it gives people room to talk.
Right.
And that's really what we want, is for people to talk about it and invite. I think someone mentioned something about you mentioned earlier about just
I was
an
saying before
opportunity.
we got started, it's one of my favorite ones just to have on the shelf. And again, it's not an overt thing. I've got plenty of overt things in my house too, with icons and stuff. But
Right.
if I have a friend over, you don't want to beat them over the head with something. But especially somebody who would be receptive to a conversation about the faith or something like that, it's a great evangelization tool to have that on your shelf and say, have you tried this one? Because it's a great product too. So, and it's probably one they haven't tried. In most cases, if they don't know anything about the faith. In our little Catholic circle, especially here in town, I think everybody was like really excited. But having a buddy over, and again, there are things you can point to just even on the bottle alone to talk about.
And to go one step further and take it back to Maryland, from my reading, is that Maryland and St. Mary's, Maryland, we owe really the modern day concept of freedom of religion in the context of a secular government. And I don't know too terribly much about that history, but I know that back when the state's constitution was being written, there was a collaboration and an accommodation for Catholicism, because of course that really wasn't the state's religion or the Commonwealth's religion.
Right.
And it was that cooperation that gave us this idea of modern day freedom of religion. So, in bringing that back to your label, I mean, here you are, not only bringing the family from where, Catholicism may have first landed in the United States to Kentucky, and now from Kentucky to the Bourbon, and now your label. It's really a pretty cool journey.
Yeah. It's a we're really, we're humbled by our ability to bring this forward, right? I mean, and just like you said, it's a way to have a conversation. And, Jesus, right, and the apostles all had conversations, evangelize, bring the good news. And so this is a way for us to bring the good news and do it in a comfortable way.
Yeah.
Right? And I think ultimately that's what this is about, is, being able to bring the good news, and you can talk about it in a comfortable environment, right? Around, a glass of bourbon, with your friends, and those that know about it, great. Those that don't, this is a way to, have a conversation. And, for me, that's what bourbon was meant to do, is to have conversation, right? To communicate. And what better way in some respects than to really have it centered around our faith. And, whether it's that bottle of Faithfully Crafted or a bottle of Monk's Road, it was really, it was intentional. And we hope, like Eric, we hope those conversations continue to occur. And it's funny, I was just down in the distillery before I came here at the tasting room, and I've got a bottle here that I'll sign and leave for you guys. But I picked up one of those bottles, and just like my tasting room staff usually does, they say, "Hey, here's the founder and distiller," and there were some people in there, and they were like, "Well, tell me about this." So I told them about it, right? And told them kind of the history behind it and why we're doing it and all of those things. And they said, "Well, that's cool. I appreciate that. Appreciate you telling me." They weren't Catholic, and and they were buying one, right? Yeah. So if you can start that conversation, and then maybe they'll do their own work, right? A little history around that, and go, okay, well, it's a cool story, right? And so it's just those things that I think, and I told them about Monk's Road, and all of those things that come together for us, right, in our distillery, and and I've got written on our wall, I've got God, family, community, and bourbon, right? And so you can walk them through that, and that.
I might take that as my life motto too. Like I honestly can't think of a better one, and again, rightly ordered. Yeah, the thing about it that's just so remarkable to me is with anything, whether it's enjoying bourbon or going out to eat or whatever the thing may be, is just having the right priority. It's generally going to be the person right in front of you, and who you're talking to and who you're sharing it with, and that's what you're going to remember most. And anything that can aid in that is always a favorite of mine, and bourbon's definitely my go-to for that reason. People who've never had bourbon before, this is good. They can have an opinion, and they can talk about it. Somebody like me who's still a novice, even though I've been in Kentucky for so long, can talk about it, and then you can hear from people who are absolute experts, and can give some real insights, and it's always interesting. So yeah, it's so good.
I think it's fascinating that I understand the history of bourbon to be, to some extent, that you have more corn than you know what to do with, and you don't want it to go to waste.
That's right.
And this idea of not wasting anything is a very Catholic idea. We don't want things to go to waste, at least in my culture growing up. And then of course you take this product that you don't want to go to waste, and you create this beautiful product, and then you use it. And while we savor it, we obviously don't want the time that we have with our loved ones to go to waste.
Right.
And it gives us an opportunity to be present, as you're saying, with that person. And this is a great opportunity to do that here in this space, but also you're giving people an opportunity to do that in their homes and still have a Catholic conversation. And it also strikes me how it reminds me of just how sublime and absolutely cool, God and the Holy Spirit are. Just, it's, you don't know how that seed is planted and where it will go. And I'm sure with your family's history, you can just think of so many different opportunities where the Holy Spirit has just been there and taken you all in a direction that you just never imagined.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and you just like I said before, you have all these life experiences that you go through, and like the greatest experience I've ever had, right, was seeing the birth of my children.
Yeah.
Right. When you see life, the created life, right, emerge from that womb, and you go, well, first of all, I'm glad I'm a guy.
Yeah.
And all women that are watching this, if they never admit that to you, then they're lying. But you see that miracle. I mean, really, it is truly a miracle how all of that comes together to create a life that you're going to foster, right? And hopefully foster in the faith as best you possibly can. And but like for me, right? Well, and this is cool, and it's all great and all of that. But the greatest thing that I've ever done, right, is create life.
Yeah.
And create it for the future. And so, that's like people have asked me this before, but that's my singular moments, right? When I remember the birth of my 5 children that I've had, to see that and be there and be present when they're born, and now each one of them are unique humans, right, that are working their way through their journey, and that sense of creation, and that it will live beyond me, right? And that's how, for me, that's the biggest thing, right? Is that this creation of the distillery, you want it to live beyond you, right? For me, I built it so that beyond me, that it continues, and it continues to provide great paying opportunities for those that are in that community, and for people to come and visit and spend money and grow something, and create good paying jobs. All of those things that we do, whether it's creating life, creating companies that live beyond you. You got to always point towards, what's my end goal, right? Our end goal, right, is to get to heaven, and I'm gonna try to do my darndest. I cuss a lot too, so I have to go to confession a lot and say I cuss. But do my darndest, right? And my mom hated it, by the way, and. Now, not that she didn't use her own words every once in a while, but I used one that she just always hated, and I used it a lot. And so, but, for all of us to point to that direction and say, hey, this is your end goal. This is where you're supposed to go. And while we all have different paths that we're trying to navigate to try to get to that end goal, and, like I was saying earlier, and I can't remember whether it was in this real time or not, but think about that end goal. Make sure you're pointing that direction as best as you possibly can. You have friends like you all that help. Each one of us should be helping each other get there, right? I mean, that's what Jesus asked us to do, right, is to help us all get there. When you take your marriage vows or wherever, it's you say, hey, or kids, these are my end goals, is to help those folks get there as well, or provide a pathway for them to see how to get there. And while we all stray and do bad things, and we have confession, and that's why I'm trying to make sure that ultimately I've got time to help me get there. We all have this end goal in mind, and as long as you have that end goal in mind, then the steps you take to get there, are important, and always, not what steps next. It's what's the end goal, and then how do you figure out how do you get there?
Yeah, it's amazing. The thing that strikes me the most is everything that you just said is exactly what I think my generation and those younger really need to hear. In many ways, like, and this isn't in judgment, I want them to have what I have because it's so good. And just seeing my friends and people I love dearly, it's like, you don't know how amazing it is when your life's oriented towards God. I wish I could just bottle it up and give them something where they could feel what it's like to see the birth of your child. When my son was born, I didn't say anything. I just cried. When my daughter was born, I said, you can have whatever you want, as soon as she came out. And then I cried. It's just so remarkable. And like, life, for me, is so full, and God is so good. And it doesn't mean that there's no suffering and that everything's peachy keen and rainbows. Nope. It's still really tough. And then you get spiritual attacks, and there's other things on top of it. So I'm not saying that, but like, yeah, just to the heart of everything you just said. If I teach, and if my students left school their senior year this year and they didn't learn anything else, it would be exactly what you just said.
Right.
It's so amazing. Well,
I think this, the tools that we have today, right, around information, and this how we have been programmed, I think, in many respects, to be so short-term in our thinking, right? I think if we all took a step back and said, really, let's think about where we want to be and how do we get there, and reorient ourselves, then I think society would be a hell of a lot better off.
Yeah.
Right? I don't care whether you're on the right or left or in the middle. Where do we want to be?
Yeah.
Right? Where do we want to be as a society? Where do we want to be as a country? And how do we point ourselves towards that? And if everybody had that goal in mind, then I think we'd all be way better off than where we are. You talk about those moments, whether it's the death here recently. What was it, Kirk?
Charlie.
Yeah, and Charlie Kirk, and then the representatives in Minnesota, and what's going on in Israel and Gaza today, and you think, hey, folks, there is your end goal, right? That's where you want to be. Are you doing the things now to make sure you're pointed in that end goal? And I'm not telling you people don't make mistakes. I make mistakes. Yeah. All of us do, right? But as long as you've got that out in there, then that should give you at least a compass, right? A compass to point to and say, am I doing the right things to get there? And how do I measure myself against that? I think that's, for me, right, that's... If we all did those things in a better way, and not live moment to moment, tick-tock to tick-tock, I think those are the things that make us would make us better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, was there any particular moment in time? It sounds to me like you're, I'll speak for myself, but maybe. There's a moment in time, I guess, where I started taking my faith more seriously than I did before. For you, was there anything like that where it put you on the path that you're on today? Is there any sort of moment in your life, or was there a season where that you turned more towards God than you had before, or has this always been something that you were endowed with?
My parents had, it was very important for them that we attend, whether it was Catholic schools where we could, attend Sunday Mass every Sunday. Didn't matter whether we were, on vacation or not, anywhere. We found a Catholic church that we went to, right? So all of us children, right, were all kind of indoctrinated into the faith that way. And, we all grew up feeling that way, and then you get smart, right? You go to college, you get smart, and you say, well, I don't need all of this, right? I don't need the church, right? I can attend when I want to attend, and at least me, right? Every one of us, it seems to me like a number of us go through those sort of, hey, and I would tell you probably the coolest thing for me, right, when I was circling around all of that, was when I moved back to Kentucky in my after I graduated from Purdue, and started visiting my grandmother in Gethsemane. It was where she lived. This is my mom's mom, and just sitting around with her sister, which was she was a sister. She was actually a sister of Loretto, so my great aunt, and a number of them would all get together particularly when she visited. And they'd all say the rosary, right? And And then, of course, I knew the rosary. I thought I knew the rosary. And they started going through the rosary and, all of that. And I'm like, oh, well, wait. All right. So let me get a piece of paper so I can read all of that, right? And, all of the mysteries and all of those sort of things. And so to see that living faith, right, was one of those things that said, hey, you know what? You've strayed too far. And so that was one of those events, right? Those times when you go, you've strayed too far. You probably need to get back into really understanding kind of what it is. And so, I think we all get those. For me, it's like one of those. Hey, here it is. Let me make sure you're kind of guided in that right way. And my grandmother was certainly one of them. My dad was one of those guys that did that. My mom, she was, and when she passed away, it was one of those. My dad we're in the hospital, and I remember my dad, and we're all praying there at the hospital, and my dad says, and your will be done. And I'm like, are you kidding me? What are you saying? Right? It was just one of those things that just slaps you up the side of the head. And your mom is maybe gonna make it, maybe not. And he says, your will be done. And I'm like,
how brave.
Correct for him, right, to say that. But for me, it was like, are you joking with me? Yeah. I want these guys to save my mom, right? I want her back. And it didn't happen, right? So you begin, and I've reflected on that moment so many different times, right? To say, and you get back to it and say, well, God had other plans. Yeah. And I may never know the answer to that, right? Until I'm, hopefully one of these days in heaven, and he says, okay, here's the reasons why. But, you look back on that, and, every one of my siblings, right, that were there, we've talked about it before. And it's just, if she hadn't left, my dad wouldn't have become a priest. He probably would not have lived as long as he lived without that experience and the renewal of that moment for him to become a priest and say, I've got another mission for the rest of my life. And then for all of the people that my dad touched out of that, right? Because when you go to Bardstown and you go to Lebanon and meet the people that my dad touched, and they talk to me about their experience with my dad, and then you begin to understand the greater picture, right, of why she was taken at the time she was taken. But in the moment, it was one of those real life moments. You go, what are you talking about? Right?
Yeah. Wow.
So
thank you for sharing that. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I don't know, we just celebrated, or at least this week, some of the readings this week led up to, who makes a good deacon and who makes a good bishop, and what type of people they should be. And of course, I'm just hearing what a wonderful man your father was, and what a blessing he's been for, not only our archdiocese, but for the parishes he served.
Mm-hmm. And people's, it's funny. It's for those that knew him, right? They all talk, pretty highly of him and his ability to listen. Now, I would say, as a kid and under my dad, my mom was the one that listened. My dad was the one that beat us. And no, that's not.
That's tough love. I think discipline is a form of love.
That's exactly right.
For the record.
Yeah, exactly. No, he didn't literally beat us, but you know what I mean. He was hey, wait until your dad gets home. Oh no, we're not. Let's not do that. Right. But for all of those folks that had that experience with my dad, and not many men, right, have the chance to receive all the sacraments.
Yeah.
And he was one of those men that was able to receive all the sacraments, and then to be able to relay that to the lay ministry that he was a part of was, that I think that was the cool side of my dad, and the gift ultimately that God gave him, because it is a gift, and whether you like to think of that at the time or not, my mom passing away was a gift to my dad, and I know he grieved over that and missed my mom tremendously. I think ultimately he saw it as a gift, because he could then provide his gift to others, right? And so, God gives you gifts, you just may not know it at the time.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
How can you go anywhere from there?
That's what
in
I was
this
thinking.
conversation?
I don't know. I think we all know I'll have another drink and maybe go out and smoke if I smoked. So, but I don't do that either. Not a good Kentuckian. I don't smoke.
Well,
We, the different approaches that the faiths have towards alcohol, of course, is interesting to note. You mentioned your father had been through seminary, I guess, with a Baptist minister. I think that's what you said.
Yeah.
I wonder if they ever had any conversations about alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
I just know that, Catholics seem to incorporate alcohol a little bit better, if that's the right way to put it. I've always seen this as we use the word expression, and I'd never really embraced that word until recently, but it's a human expression.
Right.
And as you've said, it's being able to make something like this is a gift from God, from nature, and it is an expression of human effort and labor. But a lot of faiths, don't embrace, not linger on the word embrace, but incorporate alcohol into family and community and those sorts of things. Kentucky obviously has done that very well.
Yes, we have. You look back at the first miracle, right? I mean, the first miracle is water into wine.
Yeah.
And so, I've been around other denominations that, alcohol is not a part of what they believe to be, of any good. All you got to ask is, what's the first miracle?
Yeah.
Mary asked him to do something. He did it, and he turned water into wine, and they drank it. And so, guess what? I mean, that's if it's the word alone, which we have
Scripture
the
and
apostolic and then we've got scripture, and many people are just scripture alone, right? Regardless, it's in scripture, right? It's written there. So tell me where that's all wrong. Now I understand overindulgence, right?
Absolutely.
That's one thing, but it doesn't say do not, right? So, point it to me if you can.
no, sure. Well, and I mean, one of the reasons I love bourbon is just because of its incarnational sort of, nature, for lack of a better word. That you have we've talked at length about the community and the communal aspect of it, but that you're sort of like, engaging the human senses as well at the same time, right? And And so to me, it's something that also feels profoundly human. You know, angels have communion, right?
Yeah.
But they don't have bourbon.
No, they don't. They don't. You know, right? You know, for you know, from the science perspective around bourbon and the change that happens, right, when you're taking grains and converting those grains into alcohol, and then ultimately taking that alcohol and then converting that into bourbon, is kind of the process that occurs. And then, you know, the angel gets its share, right? So, you know, the time in that barrel, there's the evaporation that occurs, which everyone talks about as the angel's share, right? Is angels are getting their share somewhere. I mean, your guardian angel is, you know, that's watching over you. You might be visiting the distillery every once in a while to take their share. But, you know, to even call it angel's share, right? How did that all? I mean, I don't, you know, I know I'm not a historian, but how did somebody come up with angel share, right? And where did that was kind of all get started? And, you know, I'd like to think, right, that our faith community had something to do with it being called angel share. It makes sense to me. Yeah. Right? Bourbon originated here in Kentucky, and it's the only Native American spirit, right? So no other Native American spirit. The only thing we have is bourbon. 95% is made here in Kentucky, and as Governor Brashear likes to say, that 100% of the good bourbon is made here in Kentucky.
That's a good line.
Yeah.
So speaking of community, how is your community down there in near Gethsemane, Kentucky?
You know,
How's the local community? How's the, you know, what's it looking like these days?
Well, I guess, well, go on. I had a follow-up.
whatever you want.
Well, I think there's also, going back to the incarnational thing too, speaking of community, that community is a word that seems like it doesn't have a lot of meaning anymore. It's sort of, you know, you can have like a group chat of a bunch of people from all over the place and call it a community, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so how's the particular community down there, but also how is that, how does that express, I suppose, authentic community versus a sort of a nebulous concept of it?
Yeah. So for me, and the reason that we put community in there was to help build community, right? In so many respects, rural America has been left out of the American experience. I think, you know, because we have centered our communities around cities, right? Big metropolises, suburbans that all go to support the infrastructure that's around those, and businesses that are near there. And rural America has been left out of that. And so when you look at you know, politics and all of those sort of good things that have now come about, or the degradation of small town America, where, you know, and the aging of small town America, because you have these communities that don't have good paying jobs anymore, that, you know, were once thriving communities, where all those businesses that used to be there are now gone, or they were consolidated, and you know, you've now got bigger, you know, you used to have When I was growing up, you used to have 5 and dime stores, right? And you used to have all of these sort of things. And then Walmart comes in, and they've got a big super center, so everybody can go, goes to the super center. Or then you've got infrastructure that's built that's outside of those areas, and then all the jobs and transportation all get built around that infrastructure. So it's this gradual degradation that has occurred in rural America. And so you've got this graying of rural America. You've got jobs that are no longer there. So the children of those graying parents have to go find something, right, to go work and create a living for themselves and their families. And so again, when we picked our location, a number of different reasons for that. Of course, it was old distillery grounds of ours and my family, but it was also intentional to make sure that we created jobs, right? That we created income for people not to have to drive an hour to Louisville or to Elizabethtown or wherever else, Lexington, and that they could find a good paying job locally and then create community, because those people there need services, right? Mm-hmm. Educational services. And so if you can do that and rebuild community where people aren't relying necessarily on crime or drugs to, you hear so much about, the meth movement and all of that is generally located on the peripheries. And while it's because there was no other means of earning money, right, in some respects. And so you turn to those sort of things to help earn a living. And I'm not saying it's right and wrong or indifferent. I'm just telling you that's what you see in rural America. Yeah. And so when you can create something like what we've done there at Log Still, to create good paying jobs, bring people in from a tourism perspective, spend hard-earned dollars there, go to the local gas station, go to the local grocery, spend money, then you begin to hopefully build up community one at a time. And that's the beautiful thing about I think our distilling industry in general, right, is a lot of the distilleries are located in and the growth that we've seen in the distilling industry, a lot of it's going back into those roots, into the local communities. And, when you can do that and help build community back, that was our purpose, right? And the reason that we located where we were. It would have been easier and much cheaper for me to, build it on the outskirts of Louisville, right, on the Gene Snyder somewhere. I would have probably had more visitors, quite frankly. Although I get 60,000 visitors a year down in Gethsemane, I've got a location in Louisville now, right? So
yeah, I was going to say, you didn't leave us hanging.
No, I didn't leave you hanging. But, if I would have put my distillery there, right, or my amphitheater there, I probably would have had more, right? Because you don't have to travel as far to get to my place down in Gethsemane. And, but I did it for a reason. And you want to help build community back. And that was one of my main reasons for doing it.
Well, I don't think I'm a minority, but there's a piece of me that likes the pilgrimage and likes the journey. And we've talked about the journey a little bit in the context of life, but just temporally, or maybe that's not the right word, but just, if I were going to recreate, going like the experience I mentioned earlier about traveling down to Holy Cross for their fried chicken dinner. I can get a fried chicken dinner really anywhere in Louisville, and I could have gone to a church picnic in Louisville, but it was, getting everybody in the car, and it was enjoying that time in the car and the banter and the music and those fun things that we.
Well, I don't know if you remember, everybody used to take Sunday drives.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody used to take a Sunday drive somewhere. Hey, let's just go. And, a lot of that, like when my parents were here and I was, a small child, we'd take a Sunday drive out to my grandmother's, right? We'd have communal dinner with all of the cousins that wanted to come over to my grandmother's house and have a big meal and share that meal, right? And share camaraderie and our faith, and then go home. And as a society, we don't do enough of that. And that's, when I was raising all my children, the most important thing we tried to do anyway was have dinner together, devices away, right? Nobody gets on the phone. Try not to watch TV unless it was a Notre Dame football game, and have at least some time together that we were all present, and those things unfortunately just have come less and less important over time, and why I think having a family meal is really important.
Yeah, and those priorities, it used to be like my 5-year goal of things that I wanted to do for fun. Like, I want to go to Europe, I want to go do this or that, and very exciting kind of stuff. But like, since I've had kids, it's like I want to like go home and like sit in the grass with my kids.
Right.
Like, I don't even want to drive up the street anymore.
Yeah.
And then, we'll still take the Sunday drives. We'll still go out and do fun things. But yeah, it's still that person right in front of you. But it's amazing. How much of that changes is you just want to be at home. And I'm an extrovert. I want to go see people. I want to be around people. If I don't talk to 100 people in one day, I'm going to be sad and mopey.
Right.
But I mean, there's just a huge part of me now that it's like, I just want to be present with my kids.
Yeah.
And and that speaks directly to it.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, and even that community building, whether that's the family community or broader than that, it really anymore, especially with the fact that you could just sit at home, like on your phone, for hours upon hours. You have to be so intentional to build that too.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think have non-negotiables.
Right.
We do Sunday supper at Dad's house every Sunday, and then I'll stick around and we'll smoke pipes, and it's a good time. And the only time we've missed, me and my wife and kids, was during the snowpocalypse back in like February, and we literally couldn't make it
out
on the roads.
That was just, of course, we were down in Gethsemane, and I remember coming up here, right, to visit our place up in Louisville. And then we'd go to some other places. And I'm like, how in the world has Louisville not done a better job in clearing off secondary roads than what I was on for, it seemed like months of ice that were up here.
We can thank UPS to some extent for what we, what snow management they have today. Because I remember even before Vincent was born, where there was a moment in Louisville history where the snow shut down.
My dad was in charge of overnight air for air operations for UPS.
So the workers can't get to UPS. The planes don't get loaded.
UPS went a little nutsy, and that was probably my dad was one of those guys that went a little nuts.
That's how it boils down. That's how change happens at the civic level. You just have to speak frankly to the government and say, we're the biggest employer you got.
Right.
If my employees can't get to work, we got to go somewhere else.
Right.
My grandfather grew up in Louisville before that, and he said that he was pretty sure there was only one snowplow truck, and I don't think he was exaggerating, in the entire city.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they had a truck for when it snowed, and there was still that conception of, we're in the South,
right?
Like, snow doesn't happen here. It was so it's definitely a cultural thing to Louisville that I remember him telling me that. I'm like, what? And then I heard the whole UPS story, and
well, I mean, UPS chose here for a reason, right? It was one of the few airports that didn't shut down. It was centrally located. They didn't have a whole lot of shutdowns because of weather-related incidences, right? And so if you're UPS or FedEx or DHL, right? The most important thing that you've got to do is deliver and deliver on time.
Yeah.
And so they chose Louisville as their hub. And my dad was a part of that process, because we were living in Atlanta at that time when they chose Louisville. And so eventually my dad, moves from Atlanta to come up here. And then when the snow, it was, I forget when that was. It
was 90 something.
It was 90 something,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, but it was huge. And, UPS went a little crazy, because they're like, this ain't going to ever happen again.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, do you think that, not change gears, but just kind of take it back to family and home, you mentioned your 5 children. Do you think any of them will follow you into the business?
My oldest is in Greenville, South Carolina, and his wife is from there. And I don't believe Wally will ever move away from there, right? And that's okay, right? He's got 2 kids now, a boy and a girl, and he's making a great living down there. She is as well, and her parents are from there, and I suspect he'll be there for a long time. Not that he doesn't have an interest, but I don't think that they would ever move up to this part of the world. And then I've got the rest of my children are in Nashville, and while we're only 2.5 hours away, my second oldest son, he's doing his own thing in the healthcare space, and wants to see that through. And while he sits on my board, as an advisor to me, I'm not sure. He looks at how hard I'm working and saying, like, I like my healthcare stuff, but
Well, he understands that bourbon has a medicinal purpose, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, he does. It certainly does, right? That's right. And then my daughter, her husband actually works for me. So Jake, he works for me, and so although they live in Nashville, he makes a commute up and back once a week or so. So he's the one that's working with me. And then my other 3, there's 6. So I was married, and she had a child before our marriage. And so there's 3 other boys that are there in Nashville, and that I've got one of those that is in. One's graduated, and so he's doing his own thing. And then I got a sophomore at the University of Tennessee, and I got a senior in high school at Father Ryan down in Nashville. And so when Hank, my youngest, graduates, I think he wants to do construction. He loves big equipment, and really just loves it, and he's good at it, and he wants to do that. Jack is going to be in the finance world, I think, and maybe he gets maybe he'll get the nod one of these days. Either that, or I'll get so tired I'll say, John, why don't you come down and run a distillery?
Oh, that's awesome.
It takes a special person to in this industry, but just in general, I think to run your own business, to take on those responsibilities.
It's a big deal. I mean, you many times, I've worked for big corporations before, and you don't think about, okay, revenue coming in has to at least make the expenses going out, right? And
unless you're the federal government.
Yes, well, that's true. That is true. And then you can write your own debt, which would be great.
That would be great.
I would love to be able to write my own debt, except my banks don't think that that's a good idea. But those are the things that you have to think about. We've got 55 employees down there, plus a number of seasonal folks, and we got payroll every 2 weeks.
It does not stop.
It doesn't stop.
Yep. Did you guys want to cover any other topics?
No, is there anything you want to talk about or promote or let people know about?
Look, I'd say go out and buy more bourbon. We do gins too. No, I would
I gotta tell my
ultimately,
wife that.
right? Yeah, we do actually make some damn good gin. What I would say is, whether it's over a glass of bourbon or any other spirit, and or just over a cup of coffee, have conversations with folks that need to have conversations, right? That are looking for an answer, and God has the answer. And as long as you're willing to share your faith and what it means to you, and just speak personally, right, about it from your personal experiences, and whether it means something to the person that you're talking to or not, at least you're hoping that they pick something up, that they remember something, and ultimately get inquisitive about that and begin their own journey to God. And that's the most important thing. I mean, that's the most important thing, is to be open to having conversations. Yeah. And that's what he's asked us to do, is to have those open conversations. This podcast is one of those ways, right, where you can share this podcast with others. And the great thing and the bad thing about our phones these days and computers, right, is there's so much negativity out there. This is a way to send something positive, right, out to our community at large, right, our nation at large, our city at large, wherever we are, and be able to say, hey, I watched this. You can do it. You can share it, right, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and share it. People will look at it, right? Some of them will turn it off. It only takes one person to take a look at it and change a life, right?
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, thank you very much for making the time.
No, thank you
coming
guys.
out here.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Chatting with us. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
So
Great.
real pleasure. So we appreciate it.
I think our best episode yet, in my personal opinion. I had the most fun.
Well, it's awesome.
That's the bourbon talking.
That's the bourbon talking. That's right. That's right.
And the Archbishop will ask about that when he comes on. I think he might be the next one. So, what about my episode?
I would feign tell him that he's the better one. He's a wonderful guy. I mean,
Yes,
you guys
absolutely
know
amazing.
him, but he's every one of them were different, right? I knew Kelly, I knew Kurtz, and now this one, and every one of them they're all very different from one another, right? But all faithful, and that's the cool thing, I think, about our faith, is that it continues on. Whoever our leaders are, whether, again, you look at Pope Francis and now Pope Leo, which who would have ever, I would have never guessed in my entire lifetime I would ever see an American Pope, period. Never would have thought that. And it was it's one of those moments you go, all right.
The time is now.
The time is now, right? So, very cool.
Very
so
cool.
thank you guys for having me on. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Wally. And thank all of you for sticking around. We'll see you on the next episode of Spirit and Spire. God bless you.